Greetings and welcome to Healthcare Leadership Live. My name is Mike Lyons and I am your host here for the show. Thanks for tuning in if you're watching live on LinkedIn or listening to the audio version of the podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And this show is all about having experts on to talk about things that you can implement in your practice to help make you a better leader or improve your practice. And today's guest, straight out of the world of ophthalmology, Hayley Boling. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Hayley is the CEO of Boling Vision, and she does culture consulting work. And that's going to be a lot of what we talk about here today because I'm a culture nerd, and I think she's a culture nerd too. And so we're going to learn all about that. Let's go ahead and jump right into it.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And before we get going here, if you're watching live and you have a question for Hayley, or you just want to say hi, that might even be better. But just say hi. We'll see your comments on LinkedIn. If you put a comment into the show page, we'll see it and we can respond to your question. I think that would be really fun.
Would love that. Yeah.
So Hayley, Tell us about how you got into ophthalmology leadership.
Yeah.
And what has kept you in for so long?
So interesting story about me. I actually come from a long line of ophthalmologists. So my grandfather's an ophthalmologist. My dad is an ophthalmologist. My older sister is an ophthalmologist. And so many people thought that I would just become an ophthalmologist, to be honest with you. And so started off in college, pre-med, killing it in the coursework. In between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I did some rotations, obviously with ophthalmology. My godfather is an orthopedic surgeon, also had some other great family friends that are physicians. And so I just took the summer to kind of do some rotations and to see what area of medicine I loved most. And what I learned, especially in the orthopedic world, is that I had a strong aversion to smells and bodily fluids. And I realized at that point, medicine is not what I actually loved. Helping people is what I loved. Seeing people is what I loved. And so I had a heart-to-heart with some of the physicians in my life, and I just let them know I don't love the medicine. And they said, oh, sweet Hayley, if you don't love medicine, if you don't love the science, don't become a physician. If you love helping people, there's so many ways to help people. And so I really started doing some internal soul searching about who I wanted to be, what kind of legacy I wanted to leave on the world. And I realized that helping people be the very best version of themselves possible is really what got me excited and got me out of bed in the morning. And so I actually went the business route. I went the communications route, the public relations route, and ended up pursuing a double major, did my MBA coursework, and then ended up with my executive education through the University of Notre Dame. And so I got a lot of credentials along the way, but some of the most exciting ones is that I actually went through the Leadership Center at the Ritz-Carlton and then the Disney Institute for Health. And those two things right there shaped my idea of what healthcare could be and what, the overall guest journey, the experience that our patients have, what it could be. And it didn't have to feel like white walls and sterile environments and scary white coats and all of that stuff that so many people feel when they walk through our doors. I wanted it to feel amazing. I wanted to feel special and warm and welcoming. And so all of that education, all of that family history turned me into the CEO that I am today and has kept me here. And so absolutely love what I do.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because you had this whole family history and it was almost like assumed, and you were even going the pre-med route there. And I kind of made me wonder, like, is orthopedics like a really smelly? You talked about the smells.
It's pretty violent. I mean, there is sawing and hacking and oh my goodness, it is not as beautiful as ophthalmology is, let me tell you. Obviously, ophthalmology has a whole lot less smells and bodily fluids, but there is still some cauterized flesh there. So I try to avoid surgery anytime I can.
Okay, yeah, I can identify with that. When it comes to all that stuff, I will go right back to my HR chair and I'll sit there and you can tell me about it, but don't really want to see that happening. I'll never forget the first time I saw a physician inject an eye with a retinal treatment, and I thought, hey, I'm glad you're doing that and not me.
Yeah, you got a little woozy watching that,
Yeah,
and
and by the way, I'm gonna eat really well and take care of myself so that I never have AMD or any of those.
exactly. I think it's like I have an empathetic overdrive, and so it's like that empathy side of me. Like
Yeah.
that is really what. So I love to help people, but I don't want to
Mm,
actually be involved in that act of the medicine,
yeah.
because that empathetic overdrive kind of takes over, and I'm like, ooh,
You
I can
feel the pain, right?
feel it, and so it's just not where my gifts lie. And so thankfully, I was able to find out what my gifts were and apply them
Mm.
in different ways.
Well, that takes me to the next subject here because empathy is something that's really required for leaders,
Oh yeah,
and it helps you be a more effective leader. And I think Bowling Vision, I think it's fair to say y'all are known for having a very strong culture.
thank you.
Yeah, and so can you tell me what do you think the secrets have been
Yeah.
to developing that culture?
Yeah, so I always say our secret sauce is intentionality and focus.
Mm,
We are super intentional about the people that we surround ourselves with, because when you have the right people on the bus and you get the wrong people off the bus, the right people in the right seats on the bus, that's when real magic happens. And so I think in leadership, so long, we kind of hold on to people that may be great skill wise, but they may not be the right cultural fit, or they may not have the personality that ultimately makes us who we are. And so often we hold on to people longer than we should. And so, what we have done is we have been super intentional about our people. We've been super intentional about our processes. We've been super intentional about who we are, what we do, and then, of course, the why we do it. And so, those everything that we do, like I said, the intentionality and focus allows us to execute the small things really well over time. And when you continuously do the small things well, you end up hitting the big things out of the park. And so, on a daily basis, if there is an opportunity for improvement, we are constantly looking for that continuous improvement. That's actually one of our mantras about one of
mm,
our three core values of excellence is continuous improvement. So, every single day, we strive to be better than we were the day prior. So, today, we're better than we were yesterday. Tomorrow, we're going to be better than we are today. Now, if we fall short because we are not perfect, perfection is not an attainable human quality. Our ultimate goal is to fail forward. Our ultimate goal is to learn from that, that shortfall, and to figure out what we can do better in the future. But again, that all stems back to intentionality and focus, making sure that we're intentional about the small things so that we really do well at the big things. And when we do fall short, we continue to learn from that. And it becomes a cycle that we
mm,
do each and every day. And so that intentionality and focus, it is not easy.
mm,
It's a simple concept, but it's not easy to execute, right? It's not easy for us to do on a daily basis because we get stuck in firefighting mode as
mm,
leaders. We get stuck in the minutia of what we do. Maybe it's our email, maybe it's conversations that aren't necessarily productive conversations. And so knowing who you are, what you do, and why you do it, and then applying that secret sauce of intentionality and focus allows us to make sure that we have the ingredients that we need for that amazing culture and that amazing guest experience. And so you'll hear that I don't even call our patients. They are guests at Boling Vision Center. They choose us each and every day, and we want to continue to earn that trust every single day. And we do that by executing the small things really well.
Well, there was about 100 things in there that I could
Yeah,
dig into, and I will dig into that. But we did have a comment here.
good.
Yes. So this comes from Jessica Holland, who
Oh, wonderful.
works with Thomas I Group,
Yes, I know
and
Spotify group well.
yes. What I wanted to comment on from what she says here is it doesn't matter what our title or our place in our clinic is.
Mm,
Um, can you talk about that and how you view leadership across your entire organization, regardless of the
absolutely.
level that someone might happen to be at?
Absolutely. So often in leadership, we think of positional power. We think of individuals that have the title, that have, the following already. And I am a big believer that we all have the ability to be an amazing leader if we start to prepare ourselves each and every day, and we try to invest in ourselves each and every day. And so the reality is that if we are just relying on positional power, we are missing opportunities to make really big impact, not just in our clinics, but also in our families and our lives and the different groups and social structures that we're a part of as well. And so what we have the opportunity to do is to fine tune and to continue to strengthen our own leadership muscles. And so that happens sometimes, intentionally through leadership development programs and education and different things like that. But it can also happen through reading and through journaling and through vision casting and goal setting. I'm a serial goal setter. And so it's one of the things that I do with my team regularly is that we talk about this 1-3-5 framework, one big goal, 3 milestone objective goals. And then it goes into like 5 more day-to-day tactics that we can do to accomplish those objectives and then eventually accomplish those big goals that we get excited about. If you are interested in leadership, start by setting a goal for yourself. Start by figuring out who you are, what you want to be, ultimately the type of legacy that you want to leave behind. What is the energy that you bring to the room? How do you make people feel when you're in their presence? How do they feel about themselves after you leave the room? And so knowing that type of energy and the type of presence that you have this unbelievable opportunity to impact the way people see themselves and the way that people interact with the world. And that doesn't just take positional power. That also takes, this beautiful opportunity for us to invest in ourselves and continue to ask those questions. And then to ask, are we living up to our very best version of ourselves possible? And if we're not, then we have that opportunity to self-reflect and figure out, okay, what can I do? How can I reset? How can I recenter and figure out what do I need to do differently so that I can be the very best version of me so I can lead the people in my life better? And so it's a really big thing that, this positional power versus organic power or organic leadership. And so use the opportunity to invest in yourself so that you can start to lead the people without even having to have a title to go with it.
This show is sponsored by Seasoned Advice HR Services, where I help clinical healthcare businesses to make more money and save more money by hiring better, retaining better, and reducing your HR risk. If you would like an HR assessment or ongoing HR support, please reach out to me at seasoned-advice.com. I love what you said, and what I get, one of the big things I get from that is how do you want to show up? It's how you show up in your job every day that other people see, and it sets an example. And I love you talked about bringing a certain energy. And I think if a person brings, confidence and desire and passion, that's infectious, right? And that can happen at any. And I think as senior leaders, we look for that. We look for people who are like on fire for the front desk or billing and who are wanting to innovate. And that's like, if you want to be a leader, then yeah, exactly what Hayley said there, bring that passion and energy.
Yes. And that's continuous self-improvement. I mean, I think so often, so I always tell my team every single day at the job interview at Boling Vision Center when it comes to looking for opportunities for growth and development. And so there are no glass ceilings at Boling Vision Center. So we reward people that invest in themselves. We reward people that constantly have that grit and that passion and that perseverance, that they have that energy, that fire that makes them ultimately want to be the very best version of themselves. And so if I can watch that when, on a daily basis, these people that are just hitting it out of the park each and every day, those are the people that I'm going to call on to see if leadership may be the trajectory that they're looking for. And so just remember that even if you're not in a formal leadership position, maybe you're not currently in that senior leadership role that maybe you desire to be in. What you can start doing is absolutely investing in yourself and being that best version of you, and then executing every single day to show the individuals in your organization that you are not only prepared for leadership, but that you welcome it and you understand the responsibility and the gravity that comes with leadership. Because it's an amazing opportunity, but there's also an amazing responsibility to it. We want to make sure that we take that and operate with care.
Yeah. Well, I want to shift a little bit here because one of the things I learned from you recently is that you have been not only have you created a great culture there at Boling Vision, but now you are beginning to export your knowledge
Yes.
and help other businesses, healthcare businesses, maybe specifically ophthalmology. You can let me know, but and bringing a specific culture model into these businesses. Can you talk about what that model is? And I don't know, what can we learn from this model to make our cultures better?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I have learned in ophthalmology and healthcare in general is that we do a really good job of talking about culture, but we don't always do a great job of diagnosing what actually creates an amazing culture or a lackluster culture. And so it's kind of this ambiguous concept. It's easy to talk about, but hard to define.
Mm.
And so culture has been one of those things that I've actually had people call it warm and fuzzy. I've actually had people call it soft skills. They've said, oh, it's Hayley Fluff. They've actually used my name in connection with culture.
Really fluff.
I always refuse to be offended by that. I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and take that in stride and remind myself that culture actually is the engine that powers what we do and how we do it and ultimately why we do it. And so culture, yes, it feels ambiguous. It feels kind of almost difficult to articulate what it truly is. And for so long, that's been the case. And so I set out on a mission this year, actually, to find a framework that actually tied culture to the business acumen and the KPIs that we work with on a daily basis in ophthalmology and healthcare and business in general. And so I did quite a bit of research to try to find the right framework that would be able to translate across industries, and then also be able to say, you know what, this is not just warm and fuzzy. This actually is the engine that drives every single thing that we do. And so I actually got certified in the Denison model. And so this Denison model, if you Google it, it looks super colorful and beautiful. You're going to be able to see a wheel that actually shows up that's, blue, red, yellow, and green. There is this insights discovery kind of concept behind it. So if you've done that insights discovery model on the energies, it kind of feels similar as far as the overall look and feel of it, which I really liked. But one of the things that it does is that it actually provides common language around culture. So rather than having this difficult to define concept, we actually are able to now say, no, culture is about 4 key traits. And these 4 key traits are mission and adaptability, involvement, and consistency. And of those 4 key traits, we then break them down into 3 indexed profiles for each one of those traits. Which totals 12 different things that we're looking at. And of those 12 indexes, then we're actually doing a 48-item survey that takes about 15 minutes to complete. So it's not anything crazy. But what we do is we're able to do a 48-question survey that then we're able to go ahead, or 48-item survey, that we're then able to dive in and figure out what really is going on in this culture and how is it going to impact your overall productivity, your return on investment, your profitability, your engagement with your team, customer service ratings. So there's so many things that go into this that we always kind of thought, oh, if it's a good culture, great, it's icing on the cake. But what we've learned and what I've learned in this Denison consulting model, this Denison model, is that these drivers are actually driving the productivity. And so it's really been a cool thing. And so this model looks at both internal and external focuses. It also looks at flexibility and stability. So you're looking at how innovative are you versus how well do you execute on a daily basis. And so it's a really beautiful concept to be able to take this ambiguous concept of culture and to be able to have this common language, because I'm a big believer, if you can name it, you can tame it. And so if we can name what's going on in our cultures, we can tame what's going on in our culture. If you can measure it, you can then improve it. And so we want to make sure that we have true items that are going to allow us to figure out what do we need to do next to improve our culture in these specific areas. And then when we do improve those, what can we expect profitability wise, or engagement wise, or customer rating wise. I mean, it even goes down to medical malpractice claims, because when you have higher engagement, you actually have less medical mistakes. And we have less medical mistakes, you then end up having less lawsuits. And so it's amazing what actually goes into culture and what it actually drives. And so this whole process has been super, it's been invigorating, but it's also been validating, because all these things that I've known for years, that I've seen for years, that I've been trying to articulate to other practices as well as my own for years, I now have language and I now have a tool that allows us to measure it and then manage it.
Yeah, I just was looking at it and it seems very comprehensive. I was kind of expecting like a very simplistic, like 4 quadrants, but no, it dives much deeper than that. We actually had a question here from Michelle Fleschner. She says, would you be willing to share the survey? Is the Denison survey assessment, is that something you can just kind of go out and just do yourself, or not so much?
So not so much. So this specific model actually requires you to engage with a Denison certified practitioner. So I'm a Denison certified practitioner, but there are people that are out there that are way more brilliant than I am when it comes to this model. I am still, I would consider myself green at this model at this point. And so I'm still learning and evolving with it. Michelle, just to let you know, I have done other types of cultural surveys that before I knew about Denison. I was creating surveys and processes and staff engagement opportunities to learn where we are and to kind of measure a starting point. It's kind of like the vital signs of a medical practice or a medical person. So if you as a provider and you're trying to diagnose what somebody is going through, you have to understand what their symptoms are. You have to understand the review of systems, and you have to look at their family history, and you have to look at all of these data points, right? So the Denison model does that, and they are way more brilliant than I am. But I will tell you that if you're looking for something that is not as comprehensive, there are other surveys that are free out there. Now, remember, you oftentimes get what you pay for. And so this is what I always say to people when they ask for a free resource. It's a great starting point, but if you really want to dive in and truly understand the overall symptoms, and you don't want to just put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, for example, you want to make sure that you understand what actually is causing it. Some of the times I actually say a bad culture is the equivalent of sepsis in a practice. And so you have to understand what is creating that septic situation. And once you understand the symptoms and the diagnosis that's causing the sepsis, you can then treat it and hopefully alleviate that.
Well, that is a very
strong visual.
Strong visual. Yeah, I'm picturing the Band-Aid on the bullet hole and the sepsis. And we've already talked about smells here. So this has been a
so many things.
Very sensory stimulating discussion here. We had another question, I guess, from Kelly. Have you worked with development programs when hiring and developing employees, like Strength Finder? This is, for me, I can say I've definitely used the DISC profile quite a bit for development and for education. I'm curious, what are some tools that maybe you've looked at to help hire or develop employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have done quite a bit of research on a variety of the different personality profiles and development programs and energy assessments that exist out there. There are so many. And so for Boling Vision Center, we actually developed, it kind of overlaps with several. So it overlaps with the DISC profile, as well as the Insights Discovery model, as well as the Gary Smalley profiles that actually look at both colors and then animals. What I have found is that with DISC, some people struggle remembering letters. What I have learned is that people oftentimes love a good, strong visual. And so colors and animals tend to work really well with my team. Now, that might not be the case for everybody, but for my team, we actually look at this as this hybrid approach between DISC, Discovery, and the animal profiles, essentially. And so what we've had the opportunity to do is we've been able to take the best of all of those, and then we've blended them into an approach that works for us. And so we have it's a test, it's a quick assessment that we have every single new hire take. And we ultimately try to understand what kind of energy they bring to the world as their kind of natural strength, right? And then we're actually able to understand where they're probably going to best be suited in our practice based on the type of personality or the type of energy that they bring to the world. Now, I make sure that our team members know that energy and personality is not static. It is not one of those things that it's like, oh, well, just take it or leave it. Either love me or leave me kind of a situation. That's not the way that we look at it. We look at it from a situational leadership perspective. And so we look at this from how do we communicate and interact with each other? How do we interact and communicate with our guests that trust us with their precious gift of sight? And we actually adapt our approach depending on who we're interacting with. And so as a practice on our name badges, we actually put a little gem next to the names. And if they lead red, for example, red is kind of like a fiery red. It's a bold kind of lion type personality or energy. Oftentimes bold can sometimes be a bull in a china shop, to be honest with you. Can sometimes hurt feelings and move forward too quickly without actually assessing the entire situation. We've found that reds are typically, really brilliant technicians, for example. But sometimes they need to understand that there is both strengths as well as limitations to those characteristics. But we put that little red gem right there on their name badge. And then on another person who might be a marketing individual in our team member, or an optician, they're oftentimes this yellow energy or an otter. They never meet a stranger. They bring people in and make them feel seen and excited. Everything is a party. So they really do a great job of connecting and making sure people feel like they are a part of the situation, and they're kind of a part of something bigger than themselves. And so that yellow energy, when a yellow energy is talking with a red energy, there can be some really interesting situations that occur there. And if you're not cognizant of those differences, if you're not cognizant of the strengths as well as the limitations of each one of those, you can actually have some butting of heads, right? And so our goal is to continue to train and to develop people so that they understand their own strengths and their own limitations. And what do they look like on a really good day? But what do they look like on a not so great day? And what can that actually do to relationships? What can that do to conversations, and ultimately what can that do to them and as far as like them showing up as their very best selves? So we try to engage that process early on. So literally as soon as they are part of our team, we are learning about their kind of natural tendencies. We're training, developing, and growing them so they know that they are empowered to actually take the next step, that this isn't just happening to me. I now have the power and the internal power and the internal locus of control to actually control the way that I respond to people. And I can actually have that ability to adjust and accommodate the person in front of me.
I love the gem idea because I love the color thing. And I think I understand what you're saying. It's like people remember those colors and the animals. I just kind of skim through that. And as much as I would love to be a lion, it would be on brand for my last name. I don't think I'm the lion, so I'm going to have to figure out what I am. Maybe I'm a minotaur or something like that. But
individuals are typically a green personality, to be honest with you. And so the green personality is this, it's a very calm personality or energy. You typically draw people in and you're able to go, rather than an inch deep and a mile wide, you're more like a mile deep and an inch wide. And so you make people feel seen and heard and loved and valued. You validate them. And so typically, your counselors, your teachers, also your HR professionals are typically individuals that make people feel valued. And so that's a really beautiful, it's a really beautiful energy that people bring to the world and necessary, especially in healthcare.
Yeah, I can see how employees, when you kind of invest this time into them, that it makes them better and makes them better workers, and they start to think, oh, wow, someone's like investing in me. And I think they respond in kind. Have you seen that?
Absolutely. And so the average turnover ratio, turnover rate in healthcare is anywhere between 25 to 40%. I've seen a variety of different studies. So we are always in the single digits, and which is a really interesting world to be in. Our ASC last year was 0% turnover. I think we're 9% turnover in our clinic. And some of that is just because we have people that move away. And then sometimes we have to make people available to the industry if they are no longer kind of living up to the Boling Vision Center way. And so of course that's my nice way of saying parting ways. But yeah, and so that turnover we all know is costly. We all know that it affects morale. We all know it affects that ability to get somebody up and running quick enough to continue with the productivity that we all have to have for our practices. So making sure that you are finding the right people up front. So investing time in the overall hiring, recruiting, retaining individuals up front is super important. So we hire based on attitude and train for skill at Boling Vision Center. So I'm not looking for people that have this amazing CV typically. I'm looking for people that have the right wanna. They have the right twinkle in their eye, the fire. They have the right positive personality that genuinely takes care of people, and they look at taking care of and service as a true honor. And so those are the types of people that we're looking for. But once you invest in them, you are going to show them that, really the power is in their hands. They then have that empowerment, that internal locus of control again. And when you have that internal locus of control, they feel like they have the ability to wrap their arms around whatever situation that they may face. And so you're exactly right. Investing in people, loving on them, reminding them who the heck they are on days when imposter syndromes, sneaks in, being available for a Hayley pep talk when somebody has one of those days where maybe they have fallen short of a goal and they need somebody to remind them that they're capable. That type of investment is going to create incredibly loyal individuals that are willing to run through a wall for you. And when they're willing to run through a wall for you, think about the amazing care that they're giving to the people that trust us with their precious gift of sight. So it's a gift.
I'm thinking about, your culture work, and let's say that you work with a practice that, maybe they don't have the best scores in certain areas, maybe, related to their team, and you suspect that maybe their hiring process could be improved.
Yeah.
What are maybe one or two fixes that anyone listening right now could implement or work towards to help them hire better so they can try to get into the single digits there of staff turnover?
Yeah. So first and foremost, if you have not taken the time recently to look at your vision, mission, core values, your why, I am a big believer that, when you understand who you are and what you do and what you stand for, what you're unwilling to tolerate, those non-negotiables, both on what you expect as well as what you're not willing to tolerate, are so important to understanding who you are as a practice. And so revisiting that to make sure that that those are still relevant, that they're still part of who you are and ultimately who you want to be. And so again, that vision, mission, values, understanding those non-negotiables, and ultimately your impact, your why. Why do you exist? And so once you understand that and understand those non-negotiables and those expectations, you're then able to figure out, who do you ultimately want on the bus with you? Who do you want on the front lines going and making a difference on a daily basis? When you're able to articulate who you want and the type of individuals, the type of energy, the type of impact, the type of legacy that you ultimately want to leave, when you're able to articulate that in words, not just a feeling, but in words, you're then able to actually identify the types of individuals that you want to hire. And so you start to say, it's not just about hiring a warm body. It's not just about making sure that we have somebody because we're short-staffed on the clinic, because I think often in healthcare, we look for the next body or the next person, as opposed to truly identifying and honing in on who you ultimately want because of the culture that you want to create. And so when you understand who you are and you understand the culture that you're creating, hiring becomes a whole lot easier. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect. There are people that can sneak through the process, and we have an intense hiring process.
Mm.
We are looking at, we have an initial interview, for example, and then in between that initial interview and that second interview, if they make it past that, we actually have them shadow our clinic or shadow the position that they are interviewing for. And we want them to see the tempo of our practice. We want them to understand that we are not some slow moving, organization. We are on fire for what we do. And we want people to see the tempo, the energy, the positivity, the engagement that we have so that they can self-eliminate if they are not the right fit for our organization. And so that shadowing, we not only get their feedback, but we also get the team members' feedback that actually interacted with them. And so I want that person to ask questions, and I also want our team members to ask that person questions. And so that engagement during that shadowing process is really critical for us. If they make it past that, then they go to another round of interviews, which actually every single person that we bring on board is interviewed by me personally. And at that point, I am looking at cultural fit, because in the first round, we're looking at, are they capable? Do they have the skills? Do they have the resume that could actually make it work? Or do they have the skill set or energy to make it work? I'm looking at that cultural fit. So I'm asking questions that actually stem right back to our 3 core values: integrity, compassion, and excellence. And so I'm asking situational questions, and I want to get a glimpse of their heart. And so I thank them for showing me their heart. I thank them for giving me that information. I always say, today is just an opportunity to get to know you. So thank you for sharing with me. And so I give them the why behind the what as far as what I'm asking. And then I go ahead and explain what I'm looking for. And then I give them the opportunity to respond. And I sit there and I wait. And there are times I even say to people, now these are some pointed questions. And so, I'm totally willing to sit here and take some time. I have no problem whatsoever with awkward silence. I always let them know that take your time to articulate your thoughts. It actually gives you as an interviewer and as a leader the opportunity to see how they do under pressure. And you can actually see how do they behave when they get a little bit uncomfortable, or how do they respond when things get a little bit dicey. And so I ask hard questions. They're all situational and stem back to our 3 core values, which stem back to our mission and overall values and vision statements. And all of that information based off of those 3 different steps gives me a pretty darn good idea. Are they going to make it at Boling Vision Center? Because I want to set them up for success. I want to give them the tools to succeed. What I don't want is to just bring somebody in just because we're short-staffed. And then ultimately, not only are they not the right fit, but they actually undermine the culture that we've created. And we have to remember that the wrong hire is not just about letting them go later. You then have to play the cleanup of some of the cultural erosion that they've created. And so really being intentional about who you are, and then creating a hiring structure or hiring process that lifts up who you are and what you do and why you do it, and then actually implementing that and sticking to it, even when things get a little bit dicey in the clinic and stuff like that. And we go even one step further on the way that we bring people on for orientation and onboarding. We even have a training and development coordinator that invests in time so that we don't have that, week 1 of training where people get taken off the floor and, all that kind of stuff. And we actually have a 90-day mentorship program that exists as well to make sure that new hire has a friend and a confidant and somebody that's going to continue to invest in them. So it's very intentional. It's very focused, going back to that secret sauce of intentionality and focus to make sure that we're bringing on amazing people.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I think that those terms of intentionality and focus have really been on display here in this conversation. Because you have really, decided, this is how we want to do things and this is how we want to hire. And, if you don't take a step back and make a plan, then you'll never get where you're trying to go. If you lack intentionality, you're not going to get really good results. So Hayley you're a walking example there. Your practice is a great example of that intentionality.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, it goes back to the old saying, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to know if you've ever reached it? And so know where you're going and know who you are, and celebrate along the way. Celebrate your people, celebrate progress. It really needs to be progress over perfection when you're talking about this cultural evolution, and making sure that you stick to who you are and what you do and why you do it, because the days get busy. The firefighting happens, and it's really easy to basically to push it aside as a project, as opposed to looking at cultural overhaul or a cultural revolution as your way of being, your way of life. And when you truly prioritize it as your way of life, amazing things happen.
Well, I think that's a great place to conclude our conversation. Hayley, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you or just get to know you or have that Boling Vision magic rub off on them?
Would love to hear from you. Yeah, so my email address is h.bowling@bowlingvisioncenter.com. You can always email me. I'm on the road quite a bit right now, and so if you want to make sure to get an answer quickly, I will recommend happy to help at bowlingvisioncenter.com. That actually goes to my team, so that they can also help along the way, especially if I'm on the road or at a conference or consulting, something along those lines. And so feel free to email me directly, and then copy happy to help at bowlingvisioncenter.com. And I promise you'll get a response from one of us for sure. But I would love to hear from you. I would love to make sure that culture remains a priority and that it becomes this beautiful possibility of change and hope and opportunity to make an amazing impact in healthcare. So would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Hayley, so much for joining the show.
My pleasure.
And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, so here on Healthcare Leadership Live, my goal is to bring awesome guests like Hayley on the show so you can learn about culture, clinic operations, and just be a better clinic, be a better leader, and be a better person too, I think. And so this concludes this episode. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to me, to the show. Really, you can't subscribe to me, but you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Follow me on LinkedIn. And I'm going to continue to bring this kind of content. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and lead with confidence.